Everybody needs to have an emergency plan because I think everyone's really in the mindset of if something happens, this person will save me, or the government will bring me medications, or someone's going to be there and they're going to get me out of this. And while that is our goal as emergency responders and managers, is to make sure that that is true, it's not always true, or it's not always true within the time frame that people are most comfortable. So being prepared for a disaster means that they can really be sustainable within a couple of days, which is how long it might take to get some equipment or medication or supplies to people who are in serious disasters.
And how do we learn more if we want to know more about emergency management?
If you want to know more about emergency management or emergency preparedness, there's some great websites. For example, there's ready.gov, which is FEMA's central website for all of emergency management information. There's always different topics you can search for on Twitter and Facebook. You can visit FEMA's website directly, where there's a whole bunch of different free online training topics that can be viewed at your leisure. There's all kinds of resources on the internet if you just type in emergency management. So people really need to think about, when they're making their plans and preparing for disasters, they really need to think about what the disasters are specific to their community. For example, in Southwest Virginia, which is where I'm from, we don't have a lot of risk for things like tsunamis or hurricanes. Up until a couple years ago, we didn't really think we had tornadoes, but I think the interesting thing about disasters is that once you plan for something very well, that plan really sort of carries over into all types of disasters. I think a great example of that is when the CDC started talking about zombie preparedness, or when Red Cross started tweeting about Sharknado preparedness. And those things are silly, but if you can prepare for them, then whatever is affecting your community, regardless of what community you're in, you'll usually have a plan that is pretty effective. Social media is great for engaging volunteers because, number one, it spreads the message about preparedness, which obviously is very important because, if you can get your entire community prepared for disasters, then the response, the recovery, everything is just so much smoother, so much more effective. It's also been great to encourage people to join the Medical Reserve Corp, because then they realize that they can actively take a part in preparedness and response that maybe they didn't know they could do before.
How has hashtags changed social media?
Hashtags have changed social media because it gives us a way to sort of categorize what we're talking about. So when you're adding a hashtag to something like a tweet or a Facebook post, what you're saying is, I have a thought and this is really the subject of my thought. And so it gives people a way to sort of look for specific items that might have to do with something in particular. For example, we use social media and emergency management. The hashtag for that is SMEM. So if anybody wants to know about that particular topic, all they have to do is search for that, and a whole slew of information comes up. So social media is a really powerful tool in emergency management, and the reason is why is because it is so incredibly fast, and usually the information is pretty reliable. So for example, the last several disasters that I found out about personally, I found out about through Twitter. We recently had, I guess it's been about a year or so ago, where we had an event that was local to me where there was actually a shooting, and I found out about the shooting via Twitter before police were even on scene. So that's amazing, and then to go from that to having a press conference within the hour, it's just amazing to kind of look at how powerful social media is. Another really good example of that is we had an earthquake in Louisa County, which is located here in Virginia. And when they had that earthquake, there's actually a real-time map that you can Google. It's on YouTube. And you can see where the earthquake begins in Louisa County, and somebody tweets some information about it. And that tweet gets retweeted and passed along all the way up to Canada, up to New York. And that happens before the effects of the earthquake are actually felt in New York. So there were people who were literally reading about an earthquake that was on the way before it ever actually made it to them. And we're talking less than a minute is how fast that information went. And that's incredibly powerful. So people who are interested in getting involved in the conversations about emergency management, a great place to do that really is Twitter. We have chats that can be followed along through hashtags. So hashtag Prepper Talk actually takes place, I think it's every night, for a couple hours every night. And then then hashtag SMEM chat takes place every Friday at 12:30 Eastern Time. So these are chats that people can start participating in right now. So people who are interested in getting involved in live events for preparedness can actually visit the Preppers Festival that's coming up. That's something that's local to me. It's in Virginia. It's in Newcastle. And it goes from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. on April 19th. And people can find out more information by going to their Facebook site and typing in Preppers Festival, or they can go to the Craig County Administration site and get more information about the event.